I'm Emma, compulsive eater, bulimic. I'm dialing in from London. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the grey sheet. I write them down, commit them to my sponsor. I don't eat in between those meals, no matter what. Abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And my abstinence day is the 14th of October, 2022, back from relapse. So it's around about 5 months abstinence now. And I'm so grateful to be here, and huge thanks to Gillian, who asked me to be of service a few days ago. So this hasn't been a long time in the making, which is no bad thing, because I can, go around in circles and get myself sort of all worked up about what I should be saying, and actually have managed to do that in the 12 minutes since this meeting has got started. So I'm just going to take a moment and trust and pray that my higher power has got this covered, and I can just speak from the heart and trust that whatever I say has some use, if not to you guys, certainly to me. In fact, there's somebody on this meeting who I heard them say that, and I'm gonna probably botch this up, but it's something about, our ears are closest to our mouths, and that's why we need to hear our own story time and time again, lest we forget. So a bit about my story. I said that I'm back from relapse, and my food recovery journey began about 15 years ago. I'm 46 now. My food eating journey began probably a few years old, if not before that. I don't know. I mean, I was certainly told that I was a voracious feeder as a baby, and I was born heavy. And I've shared on a number of meetings the shame from such a young age to know that my birth weight was heavier than my siblings and heavier than average. And somehow I already found a way to think that that was a failing in me, rather than just seeing that I was a healthy, bonny baby. And that same shame has really been with me throughout my life in relation to my eating and my body weight, and really everything to do with food. So from a young age, the food lit up, and especially the sweet stuff. And I was praised for cleaning, for finishing my plate. And I just took great pleasure in food. I really, really enjoyed my food. There wasn't a food I didn't like. And I always had a sense of wanting more of it. I think back, or I have an image in my mind. Again, this is one that is from such a young age, such a young memory of me as maybe a 4 or 5 year old at my own birthday party, sat around a sort of table, heaving with food and party decorations, and everybody has left apart from me, with this sort of napkin round my neck and sort of crumbs all over my face. And that was sort of it, the other children went on to play, but for me, the pleasure was in the food. And I could have only been a few years old. It wasn't until I hit teens that things really started to take a turn for a worse. And I think in part because my body changed seemingly overnight with puberty, and my hormones kicked in, and the kind of angst and the depression and the despondency that I felt to just be in my own skin was really extreme. And I think probably if I look back at that time in my life, that is the time I've been the lowest. I don't think of myself, that hasn't been how the disease has manifested in me. I am quite a sort of happy, like the core of me is happy and positive and glass half full. And yet the impact and the consequences of the food and the overeating will make me very, very, very low. So this was kind of clear to my family members, and my mum, bless her, did her best and did what I've heard many of you describe your own mothers doing, especially at that sort of, in the 1980s. She took me to Weight Watchers and I was only 14, and I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old now, so I can kind of actually see just how young that was and how dangerous that was. My body was still growing, my brain wasn't developed properly. And my mum, who might be a foodie, might be someone who enjoys some of the foods we don't eat on the grey sheet, certainly her weight has always been overweight, but she's not a food addict like I am. And that's really clear from how we both responded to doing Weight Watchers. Bearing in mind, this is my first diet ever. She goes week in, week out, does the plan, and the weight starts to drop off and she feels great and looks great. I go, and maybe the first week I lose a bit of weight. By the second week, I am looking at all the ways I can manipulate this plan. I'm eating all my points in one day and then skipping, restricting for the rest of the week. Or I'm looking at how I can get maximum amount of food for the minimum amount of calories, or whatever it was. It was manipulation to the point where I even just stopped even doing that plan and did my own version, which was, the beginnings of restriction. And that was like, no one taught me to do that. Like, how did I know to do that? Why was I even doing that just a few weeks into doing my first ever diet? I have never been able to diet successfully. And that's why I sought out another solution for my compulsive eating, because I qualify as compulsive eater, bulimic, but actually at my core, I'm a compulsive eater. And the bulimia was an attempt to find a solution to just not being able to stop my eating, being so out of control with it. So that bulimia kind of kicked in around the age of 17, 18. And then the next few years, I went into a rapid descent with binging and purging back to back. Every item of food that went into my mouth, no food was safe. I started shoplifting. I made myself very, very ill, but I was in such a level of denial about it, as was seemingly everybody around me, because I never had any kind of intervention. All of this stuff that was going on was, or how I was outwardly presenting, everybody was saying I look great. Wasn't I doing it? It was just like, it's the craziest thing really to me that I was dying. I could have had a heart attack. I could have ruptured my esophagus. I certainly ruptured blood vessels in my eyes. My face was puffy and swollen. Photos of me from that time, I don't look very well. But I am an addict of the high functioning variety, and I somehow completed university, got a really good degree, went into a graduate job, formed a relationship with the man who I'm still in a relationship with 25 years on, is my husband, father of my children. And, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I don't know which is better or worse. Probably they're both, neither is. It's just, this is my experience. But that always having that belief that somehow I was still okay because of all of these things on paper that showed I was okay, the sky didn't fall in, just kept me in the food longer and kept me in relapse, because every time I went back into the food, I could still show up to my job. I was still kind of parenting my children. It was just what it required internally in order to do that stuff. And the older I have got and the longer I have done this for, the harder that has been to show up, the effort it's taken. And as I have got abstinent this time round, 5 months under my belt, I've been really tired. There's been a different quality to getting abstinent. It's like my body is so worn down from that back and forth of relapse, a few days here, a few weeks there, coming up for air every now and again, and then back in the food or back in the... Thanks, Adam. So I suppose what I want to share about, and has been really feels like the sort of, I don't know what the right way to describe it, that like the focus or the priority or where I put my attention is for the person coming back from relapse, because for a long time I didn't feel like I had a home I went to meetings and I just heard the people who were doing great and had the day and thought I was the only person in the world who couldn't get this. And I felt such shame for my day ones. And actually, the more I listened and the more I stayed, I realized that there's probably more people, certainly in GreySheet, with relapse as part of their story. And what I heard them say, what I heard everybody say, is just don't go, just stay. And I started to realize that if I stayed, eventually, and it might not be today, it might not be for like, I don't know how many months or years, but at some point, the desire to not eat would become greater than the desire to eat. And that is what happened. And I don't even know how it had. I don't know. Someone asked me the other day, when was the moment that it clicked? It wasn't like there's a tangible, that was 5 p.m. on Saturday, the 1st of whatever. But there was just a sort of gradual shifting into this state of, I don't want to eat anymore. I don't want to go to the food anymore. It is agony when I do that, even if all I've had is one extra morsel of a GreySheet abstinent item. The pain and devastation that I would feel for just having taken myself there was just not worth it anymore. And I really surrounded myself with people who were very loving, very supportive. A sponsor who's like, I don't care what your day count is, say your day count, don't say your day count, whatever's going to work for you here. I just care that you're committing commit your next meal to me. Just commit the next meal and do your best, to not binge between now and then. And that's all that I did. And there really is hope in this fellowship. It is a stunning fellowship. The community here is like no other. And I have tried 8, 9, 10, I don't know how many different other 12-step food fellowships, because I kept trying. I didn't give up on myself, and I didn't give up on hope. It's just that I didn't ever find the right solution for me. I need a program that weighs without exception. And all the other ones I went to before, they weighed with exception. But I can't have any ambiguity around my food, because that is where I'm gonna, I've told you all how I responded to Weight Watchers as a 14-year-old. There is no exception. I have to have a boundary. Thanks, Adam. And that's because my addiction is not only to the substances and the ingredients and the things that we put down, it is in equal measure to the quantities. So I need my food on the scale. And I'm grateful that I get to do that here. And then this magic happens, because the food goes on the scale, and then life just gets easier. It gets gentler. It gets joyous. Everything starts to regulate. So I'm really grateful. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.